Welcome to another episode of the Drummers Podcast. So before we start, the clothes I'm wearing now and also during the podcast was gifted by Killstar. If you never heard about Killstar before, it's an online shop where you can find clothes for alternative styles. You should check them out, killstar.com. I will leave the link down on the description. Today we'll have another friend of mine, a drummer from Virginia known as Cami Loops.
Hey,
How are you
how are you?
We're
Sorry,
finally here.
Yeah, I know it's been a lot of moving around, running around. So, how was your rehearsal?
It was good. It was actually the last one before the show, so it had to be a very focused one.
Cool.
So, why drums and when did you start playing drums?
So, I first heard drums when I was 5 years old. I was just sitting in church, and I was like, the sound of the instrument immediately spoke to me. I was like, man, this is like my voice. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to play. So from 5 years old till now, I've just been trying to learn everything about drumming, whether it's drum set, marching, percussion. I just love the sound of all these different instruments.
Back then, do you had in church, do you had a mentor or a teacher, or you just learned by yourself?
I kind of just learned by myself. So my cousin was the drummer in church. So he was the first drummer that I ever saw playing. And so I went to my parents. I was like, hey, I really want to play. And I'm like 5 years old at that point. So I know my parents were like, what are you talking about? Like, you're a kid. You're like a toddler, So, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. So it was just, all of those programs in school, like in elementary school, I was in all the music programs. Got some sticks. Would just always be practicing, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just trying to learn. And so when I got into middle school or elementary school, my elementary school in New Jersey had a music program, and so I signed up for drums. And I started learning to read basic quarter notes, eighth notes, and stuff like that. And I didn't have a drum set, but I would set up just a magazine to make the toms, and I had a little snare, like a pad. So I had a snare, and I just made a drum set out of what I had. And when I was about 13, so I was in middle school, my mom finally bought me my first drum set, and I would just practice all the time for hours. And then I just, started to learn, still kind of working by myself. And then when I was in high school was when I started taking lessons. And that's when I kind of met my mentor. He was in the Army band. He was playing for the President of the United States, this big, amazing drummer, percussionist. And I started working with him. And after I finished high school, I auditioned for the Navy band. And that's how I started my career as a military musician.
And how old were you when you started the military drums?
I was 19.
While you were there on the Army, you were not playing a drum set, right? You were just playing marching and percussion.
Drum set, marching, concert band, brass bands, literally every single style of music you could think of. They would say, hey, play this. Here's the music, read it, And so that kind of was everything. Even my first duty station was in Japan. And I got to Japan. They were like, here's the book. We're going on tour. It's a big band. You're the big band drummer. I was like, I don't really know how to play big band music. They're like, we're going on tour in about a week, so you got to figure it out.
How many times did you have to prepare yourself for that gig, for example?
So when I got to the band and they were like, hey, here's our book. You got to practice this and learn it. It was usually that was kind of the toughest thing, because once you're in the band, then you kind of have more time to prepare and learn the music. And once you learn the music's not going to change for a year.
Yeah.
So it's going to get better and better every time you play it. But it's the initial coming into the band and just being ready to go and, jumping in. That was kind of the hardest part. But it taught me a lot to learn music quick, because in situations like that, some drummers or musicians may sit and practice it over and over until you get it.
Yeah.
In those types of situations, you don't have that much time, to get it practice so much. You have to be quick. So whether you're going to read music or take notes, chart it out, figure out a way that you can learn this music super fast and then be able to perform it at a high level.
And you didn't have experience with bands before that. It was your first.
So like I was a high school musician going into a professional military band setting. So that was like my first professional gig. So like even my recruiter that I went to, he was like, I don't know if you're going to make this audition, because I had to audition for the Navy and get accepted. He was like, all these guys that are in here kind of have like bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. Some of them have PhDs in music.
They drop you with the wolves.
You're literally just finishing high school and you're trying to do this thing that, that these really pro musicians are doing. And so I just prepared for my audition, but I had like my mentor, my drum instructor, Miles Overton. He was kind of preparing me even before I even wanted to join the military band. He would give me material. Here, read this, practice this. And like literally the sight reading piece, he had handed that to me randomly one day. I was like, go practice this. He didn't know what it was going to be, but I looked at that and I was like, I have this exact sheet of music, so having someone that's kind of doing what you want to do is always, kind of cool.
And that was in Texas?
This was when I was living in Virginia. So I'm actually from Virginia. This is where I joined the military from.
Okay. I thought you were from. You told me in name that you were from Virginia. I remember now, but I don't know. I got the idea from Texas.
The military life keeps you moving a lot. I'm not in the military anymore, but my husband is still active, so we move every 2 or 3 years.
Is he a musician too?
So he was a saxophone player, classically trained. We met in Japan in the band. Yeah,
this is a story. We have a podcast now.
Yeah, so it's kind of, when people were like, so how did you guys meet? Yes, he was in the band and we were both in the Navy band together. But he decided probably like a few years into the music program that he wanted to become a pilot. And so he flies planes for the Navy. So that's what keeps us moving.
So I believe that you guys have kids.
We have one.
One. How do you manage to take care of your child with a pilot husband and also have time for drumming?
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
From the outside, it seems impossible. So I'm really curious about it.
It takes a lot of almost kind of tricking your mind. And so you look at your day, you're like, I don't have enough time to do all of this stuff and practice and, whatever, make videos or whatever. But then you tell yourself, I have more than enough time. So you trick your mind. So throughout the day, you will find time where you can, work on little bits and pieces to prepare maybe something at the end of the week. Like whether I'm editing a video, I might have 5 minutes here and there to edit it. But we compile that 5 minutes over the course of, a few weeks or a few days. Next thing you know, your video is complete by the end of the week. So a lot of stuff is just working on it little by little and not getting overwhelmed or upset if you're not able to finish it all in one day. Because that used to be my thing. Like, I want to finish, my goal is to finish this today. But then, like, I have a small kid, I have a lot of moving parts, if it doesn't happen, what am I going to do? So I say, I have more than enough time. If I'm going to do a little bit every day. And so that kind of keeps me encouraged. I think it's mostly about just staying encouraged, working on little bits and pieces every day.
Do you have like a plan or a goal for, like, for example, a video per week or at least 3 videos per month or something like that? Do you manage your videos like that? Yeah.
So at the beginning of January 2024, I kind of had a plan, but I didn't take into account, hey, we're going to be moving. So did a move from Texas.
You moved to stay?
So we did 3 years in Texas and now we moved to Virginia just a couple weeks ago and we're going to be here probably for about a year. So like even my setup, my drums, I have little kit here. I have practice pad. Everything is dispersed, like I don't have my studio like I used to have, but I still little by little, you work on stuff, you stay encouraged, but it is a lot.
It's good that you find some positivity even in that drastic changes, because for me it's one of the nightmares every time I think about move, especially my studio from somewhere else, because I start to think like I get a lot of used to the spaces I'm working on, because like you get some emotional contact with it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's very hard to start all over again, especially with my motivation. You are a drummer, a full-time drummer, right?
So even before I left Texas, where I was teaching. So I was doing teaching at a middle school and high school. And so I was teaching drums and percussion. So everything is kind of based around drumming, even if it's, at a music store.
How do you manage, for example, with students or with schools, when you move from a city to another, you lose the students that you have, probably the bands or the artists. Do you had like a plan before you moved, or you just like wishing and embracing the unknown and let's get started again, because if I did it once, I'll do it twice?
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, since I was 19, I've moved every 3 years. I'm about to be 35 in June. So every 3 years I have been moving since I was 19. So I'm used to it. And I even let the musicians know, like, hey, I'm only going to be here for 2 years or 3 years. And so they kind of have that in mind. Usually they still want me to come and play and just, we can still have that exchange and that experience. But yeah, like I kind of had to be, I don't know, okay with it in my mind. And so that's why I hit social media so hard, because I move so much. And so that is kind of my consistent way of being a musician, is like my social media, because I'm not going to stay with the same band for, forever. I'm going to play with them for a little bit and I'm going to move. So ideally, I guess I would have a group that even if I move around, we could still get together. We can still practice wherever we are in the US and still, work on music. That I haven't found that yet. I guess I haven't really focused on that. Since about 2020, like the shutdown, I kind of just started writing my own music and kind of focusing on my own sound before I start trying to like bring in people to come and, work with me and stuff like that.
How is the weather down there in Virginia? Because I know that you do a lot of drumming outside. Right.
Yeah, so literally, as we were coming back, it was raining, and I'm like looking at this weather, and I'm like, man, I actually miss Texas, because there's a lot of sunny days where I could just grab a cajon, I can grab like just a small piece of percussion, go in my backyard, and make a really cool artistic video. But like when the weather is not too good, and you're like, it's cloudy and it's kind of gloomy, it's like, all right, what am I gonna do today? So.
You told me down in Anaheim that the first boom on your social media was that video that you were with your kid. How do you call that? Yeah, and playing drums with it, which was awesome. Like, I remember, I believe I was following you before already. I remember that video like very well. Because it was very unique. A drummer with the baby playing drums. It was amazing. And was outside? It was outside also, right?
Yeah. So it was in my garage. So I've done videos where we were outside, but the one that really went super, super viral, ended up in commercials and everything, that one was in my garage that I filmed. But yeah, I would do videos with him outside, just a nice day, put the baby on, carrying the drums with the baby on, setting it up.
Sometimes we find excuses like, oh, I have to take care of my kid, or I have to do this, or I don't have enough space on my garage.
Right.
You are the perfect example that you can do everything at once if you have the will to do.
Yeah.
And if you have the motivation. Before I ask the main question, which is the motivation one, I want to ask you just a few more. I know that you used a lot of different and unique drum sets made by yourself with different pieces. How do you get to the set? You already have it in mind what you want, and you search for the sound, or you just keep trying until you find it?
Yeah, it's the second one. So some of the videos I make are like, sometimes they're 15, 20 minutes long, and I'll start off with one set up, maybe like a cajon, cowbell, a small timbale, and then like my ears would be like, no, we don't need the sound, we need a shaker, or we need something else. So like even on video, you'll see me go inside, I'll come back out, and I'll try different things until I get the sound that I'm looking for.
do you have like a time on the day to go to the drums or to play drums, or like for example, Mondays I have between this and this, and Tuesdays will have to be in the end of the day? Or do you have like a plan, a weekly plan, or you just go with the flow?
Kind of going with the flow, because I can have a plan to say I'm going to practice at this time, and then my son's going, Mom, I need this, or I need help with this, or I need, so having too much of a plan or a schedule, it makes it a little bit too like stressful to be like, I had a plan to do it at this time, now I can't do it. So for me, it's just I'll have one thing or two, maybe max 3 things. It might include practicing, making a video, and maybe doing some editing. And so sometimes, usually I save the editing for way late at night when he's sleeping. So I might wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and edit a video, complete peace and quiet, so I can have the focus.
Yeah.
But he might wake up in the morning, I can grab my sticks real quick. Maybe he's doing something, I can practice 5-10 minutes 2 or 3 times throughout the day. And that's kind of what I did today. Like, I woke up, he was playing with his toys, practice real quick, go through something. And so that's also kind of like the most I can do is have a plan on what I want to play or what I want to practice. And then when I have the time, I just have to boom, go do it. Yeah.
You go by goals, or you go by a everyday different routine?
So I'll have like a big goal. So for almost, it's been like 2+ years, I've been working on claves, specifically the 3/2 clave, right? And so practicing that, and so sometimes it might just be thinking about it or listening to something and kind of going through, like, I am practicing, but I'm not physically playing. And so that's kind of a lot of my my practicing is having like one big thing that I'm working on, that I'm taking small little small little details of it. For example, after I learned how to do the 3/2 clave with my left foot, add the bass drum in to do the tumbao. And then, okay, can I play rudiments on top of this? And this might be over the course of a month or 2, but now I'm just working on making it feel really comfortable. So a lot of my like polyrhythms and stuff that I'm trying to sound like multiple percussionists. That's been over the course of, honestly, it's been over the course of like a year of just working with it and just trying to make it sound like really, really effortless. I want it to sound like I'm not even trying. And so that takes a lot of like very slow practice and like very detailed. Like, I'm going to work on this specific thing with my left foot for 30 minutes. If I have the opportunity to, I'll just sit. And sometimes it might just be me moving my foot, like while he's doing something, my son's doing something, or I might be sitting and talking to you or whatever, but I'm still kind of.
I'll do that too.
The reps. How many times have you played this to the point where it's so comfortable that you don't have to think about it?
See, like we are used to see the final results of other drummers.
Right.
And so we lose the patience while we are practicing something, because sometimes it takes a month, and sometimes it takes 2, and sometimes it takes a year, depending on the level you are. So that's a true story thing, right? It happens with you, and it happens probably with other drummers that you know. We sometimes we think it's just with us, but it's not, right?
Right. Yeah.
And do you sometimes lose your patience while practicing and like keep going to other rhythm? Because it happens to a lot of drummers I know, and even with me. I'm practicing a thing. I know that I have to practice this, but my mind starts to fly away, and when I notice I'm doing chops or I'm doing something else. Does it happen to you?
Oh yeah, it definitely happens. It happens to me a lot, and I record basically my entire session, even if it's 30 minutes. Last session I think I recorded was like almost an hour, because I had the time to just play. And you'll see I'm like working on something, and then I'll go off, play something else. I'm like, oh, I gotta work on this. So it's like, I guess it's just like your mind is actively thinking as you're like playing. You still want to have that freedom to create something else as you're working on something. So I don't necessarily think it's bad, because I think it kind of keeps it fun. Like, you're working on something, you take a little break, you play something you enjoy. You're like, all right, I gotta come back and work on this. And so like, you're giving yourself a break while you're possibly working on something that you actually need to practice.
Do the market sometimes it's unfair for you at the point that you feel dismotivated while in the next day to come to the drums and play with the same strength that you were in the day before?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I think it was, I will say, honestly, actually, when I was in the military was probably the time, especially as I got closer to when I was getting out, there was a point where I didn't like to play drums because I had to play drums, certain type of music every single day. And so it kind of takes the freedom of like, I don't want to play this music. I like drumming, but I don't want to play this. But then you're forced to play it because you're hired to play this music and do whatever they tell you to do. And so it got to the point where I was like, man, I don't know if I want to play drums anymore. And I was like, of course, I want to play drums. I love drums. But because you have to do music in that way, it kind of makes you, it's a very kind of interesting thing. Because you're not on your own schedule. You don't just say, how, like right now, I can say, hey, I'm going to practice right now, or if time permits, or my son's, occupied, hey, I can practice right now. But like, it's not, it's like, this is the time you're going to be here. You're going to play right now. You're going to play this music. And so.
And it's always the same thing again and again and again. And you get kind of bored with it.
For example, 2020, when the shutdown happened, right? Prior to the shutdown, I was on tour. My son was 2 months old. Brandon, my husband, had went he deployed. So he's in Bahrain. I'm a new mom. And now I'm starting this tour. And so there was like a lot of moving parts, but I was still really motivated in all aspects to keep playing, to keep practicing, and to keep like moving forward, despite that he was gone. And I didn't let all the situation overwhelm me, and especially after, everything shut down in 2020, that's when I produced my first album. Because if I'm going to let my thoughts go to the negative side of like, oh man, my husband's gone, I'm so sad, I have this newborn baby, like he was about like 6-7 months old, and I'm like, man, it's just too tough. Like I could have gone that way. Yeah. But I said, you know what? Every single day I'm going to wake up and say, I'm so grateful for a brand new day, despite everything that's going on with the shutdown and all this stuff, and we have to stay inside. I'm so grateful. And so much cool stuff happened because I maintained such a positive attitude. Endorsements, like an endorsement with Tama happened, an endorsement with Mino happened, all during the shutdown. Like when companies are letting people off and all of this stuff is happening, they're like, go pick out the drum set you want. We're going to send you whatever you want from our website. I'm like, what? So like, it's really, really powerful to maintain your positivity and your motivation in the face of adversity, because it's easy to be motivated when things are good. You're like, oh, everything's fine. Everyone's behaving. My husband's here. Everything's great. That's easy. But it's not easy to be motivated when like things are like, I don't know what's going on. I'm here. I'm living in my parents' basement literally right now. I'm trying to figure out, what I'm doing. And so it's like, still every single day, I'm like, I got to wake up, hey, it's a positive day. It's a beautiful day. It's raining outside. Who cares? It's a beautiful day. How am I going to work on this video? We'll find out a way, So just like that.
That's the thing that I do appreciate a lot, which is people that keep positive no matter what. I wish I was more like that. I'm more that dark guy, like for me, it's more easy to find an excuse and to find a thing to, even when I have every reason for being motivated and happy, sometimes I find something. I do admire a lot. And I try to be surrounded as much as possible to people that have that same mindset as you do. Like, stay positive no matter what. Like, it's not the end of the world. We'll figure it out and we'll find a way. I'm thinking a lot about my situation and about my mindset when it comes to motivation, when it comes to drumming, when it comes to where I am in the age that I am. And this podcast it was born from that thoughts. So I'm also trying to do an auto evaluation of me to change what what is not working on it, what is not making me good. And one of the things is getting out of the negativity and the bad thoughts. Most of the times I'm sitting in my drums and I'm not in the mood. So I go outside, I take a coffee, and I find myself like an explanation for not being in the mood. And there's none. I have a good studio. I'm totally happy for it and grateful for it.
Very cool. What does it say? What does it say back there? Lucky cat?
It's lucky cat. Yeah, because I do those stray cats from the road. They come here and I feed them. So
wow.
I do have a lot of them here.
Wow.
So I decided to name it the lucky cat. And also this little cat over here. That was my buddy during the lockdown here.
Wow.
So it was just me and him. And I decided to name it.
Wow. Where are you again? You're in Argentina?
I'm in Portugal.
Portugal. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's the thing. I try to find an excuse for not being in the mood or for being negative. And most of the time I don't have it. I have a lot to be grateful and a lot to be happy. I'm just used to being negative. So here is my space, no negativity around anymore.
Right.
So I'm getting inspired from people like you and from stories like yours, for example, because as I see, you had much more responsibilities and much more to think about that I am, and you're still doing it, and you're still growing, and you're still moving on and moving forward and strong and happy and enjoying the path, which is very, very important. Let me ask you a last question. Let me ask you about the market in Texas. Is it a good place to be a musician? Is difficult, or what do you think?
So I was really far south Texas. So you have like Houston, San Antonio, the big cities. And so I'm not in the big cities. I'm all the way down here. We're away from the big cities in Corpus Christi, Texas. When I got to the area, like, you know, I was a transfer from Jacksonville, Florida. So I was living in Florida prior to coming to Texas. And so I got there and people were like, the music scene is kind of country, you know, it's kind of like weird. You do a lot of bar gigs, you know, $100, you know, is kind of the thing. And so I was like, I don't really want to do that. And so I was basically teaching. And it wasn't until like my last year in Texas where I was like waiting on a lesson. And then a guy heard me playing. He was like, hey, do you want to play the jazz festival with my group? And I was just like, yeah, I'll play the jazz festival. And so from there, like people started, they're like, you've been here like a year and we don't know about you. Like, where have you been? And so from there, I just got a lot of gigs. And so is the market good for music? It's not the best, but if you're a good musician, you can be playing gigs every weekend. Can you play gigs every day? I think it would be kind of difficult just because it's not like a big city where maybe you go and you have dinner and, you know, it just has that type of, prior to moving to Texas, because I was in Florida before that, I said, I played one bar gig in Texas and I said, I'm never playing a bar gig again. And so when I said that, that's literally probably within a month or two, I got picked up for a world tour and I was playing Newport Jazz Festival. We were going to Israel. We were going to Morocco, all these places playing these massive jazz festivals. And so like when you kind of shut down an idea and say, I only want to do this type of thing,
it will more on that.
Everything will kind of be rearranged to give you what you're actually thinking of, you know? So if you're like, oh, I can only play bar gigs, then you will only play bar gigs.
So do you teach online lessons too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have. So even between the move and some of my students that I was teaching in Texas, they were like, they try to keep going to, you know, different instructors and they're like, oh, I only want to go with Cami. So people will follow me through, even though I'm moving, they'll still like, hey, I still want to take lessons with you. So online lessons has been really helpful in that way. I never really hit online lessons really hard, like as far as marketing it. But people come to me and ask about it. Like I always say, yeah, you know, some people just want to do 1 or 2 lessons. They want to work on something specific, maybe talk about technique. And so I do that. But then I also have students that I work with consistently over like months. So
for the people that are watching this podcast, what is the best way to contact you for having lessons? In this case, probably online lessons. Should they message you on Instagram or?
Yeah, Instagram Instagram is probably the easiest, and you can find me under Cami Loops, CAMILOOPS, or Akhamie Music, AKHAMIE.music. So yeah, that's probably the easiest and fastest way, because I don't necessarily check my email all the time. But yeah. So yeah. So that's probably the best way. I make YouTube videos, but I've also been like, hey, at the end of YouTube videos, sometimes I'll be like, hey, if you want a lesson, text me. So I put my number out there as well. It's like text 202-505-0510, and we can set something up.
We can find you on YouTube, searching for Cami Loops also, right?
Yeah. So I recently I'm in the process of like rebranding myself, and that was just, I guess, over the past like the beginning of the year. I went from being strictly Akhamie Music to Cami Loops.
Yeah, I think it stays more in the mind, because for me, for example, when I read Akhamie, I was not able to pronounce it. Because a different language is very difficult. Cami Loops is way easier for international people.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was thinking, and that's kind of the direction that I'm going in as well. So yeah, new things on the horizon, new goals, new plans for the upcoming as we're moving through 2024.
Yes. So any last advice for drummers, for the practice or for the motivation or for the drumming itself?
I would say number one thing is don't compare yourself to other drummers. That's probably the biggest thing that will like deter you, make you demotivated, probably sometimes even make you want to quit, is when you start comparing, or this person has this, or what is blah, blah, blah. And so once I stopped doing that, I learned a lot in 2020, like during that shutdown. I stopped comparing myself. I focused on my own sound, my music, my whatever. And that made everything so much easier. Because like, if you're like, oh man, I really want to work with companies. I really want to be endorsed. But in your mind, you're constantly going, but oh man, this person's so much better than me. Or this person actually deserves it more than I do. And it will sabotage you every single time. And so once I stopped doing that, and I got really specific, because I was like, I want to play Tama drums every single day. I'm going to say I am so grateful and thankful to be a Tama artist. And I was not a Tama artist, so it was a lie. But I had to convince myself first that it was possible. And literally 6 months later, like the Tama AR reached out to me and was like, hey, I've seen your videos. It seems like you really love Tama drums. Are you interested in working with our company? And I was like, yes.
A divine intervention.
Yeah. So that's my biggest, don't compare yourself, and trust yourself, trust God, believe, and you'll always come out on top.
Thank you very much for your time again, for sharing these thoughts and advices, and also your story with us. I do hope that we can do this more often, probably one day, as soon as I take care of my own schedule. I'll be very pleasure to book a lesson with you, one or two.
Oh, sure.
Because I do enjoy drumming very, very much, and I believe that you can help me with a lot of things. So we have to do that. Until then,
sure.
Yeah, this was an amazing conversation. I feel motivated already. I'm like, as soon as I end this, I will go to the drums and practice.
That's what it's all about. Keep moving forward. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I think what you're doing is really great. I mean, inspiring and motivating other drummers and musicians to, keep focusing. Because, I mean, being an artist it's not an easy thing in any aspect, whether it's painting or music, dancing. It's a tough thing. So there's a lot of motivation that's needed. So what you're doing is super cool.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll keep talking. Bye.
Sounds good. See ya.
Bye. If you do like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I hope you liked this video, and see you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.